Thank you. I have a slideshow that I'm going to start with, so I'm going to come up here. And if someone from VC Circle can help me. Okay, just give me a minute there, okay? First of all, we are delighted to be in Pune. Very excited about the startup ecosystem here. The only thing I'm not excited about right now is that we got the graveyard slots, so we got the post-lunch where everybody is, relaxed and in food coma. So hopefully what, I'm going to request our panelists to do is to be very high energy, and I want the audience to also interact, post in the Q&A session so we wake up, okay? And why did I say I was excited about the startup ecosystem here is, let me give you a piece of data around that. According to a software products think tank, 5 Indian product companies have crossed the $1 billion valuation, okay? 5. 2 of them are from Pune, Quick Heal and Pubmatic. So I want to start the panel with a big round of applause for Pune. Thank you, VC Circle, and we're very, very excited to be here. Now, this panel, as you know, is about technology in healthcare and education and how transformative it is. And I believe a picture is worth many more than 1,000 words. And so I'm going to start by showing you just a few pictures to lay the context of what this panel is going to be about, and then we'll start the panel, okay? Teachers of today, teachers in the future. Doctor appointment earlier, doctor appointment today, learning today, learning in the future, learning in the future. Health checkups today, health checkups in the future. Surgeries today, surgeries in the future. That's it. Okay, so just that was just a few slides to lay the framework of what I'm going to start with. You want me to be here? Or? Okay, fine. So I'll join you guys again. My first question as I'm heading back is to Gautam. Okay, Gautam, given your experience in creating cutting-edge products that allow, I believe, traditional ECG instruments to be replaced by handheld devices, I thought this question would be very relevant for you. Okay, the founder of Practo estimates that 25% of the entire healthcare industry, 25% will be powered by e-healthcare. So just to give you some numbers, if we are talking about a $170 billion industry by 2017, so that means $42 billion in a couple of years will be powered by e-healthcare. The market for online doctor booking alone is estimated today only at about 50 crores, which is expected to climb to 1,000 crores in a couple of years. Okay, so we've seen many companies like Practo, which is in doctor search, or HealthCart on e-commerce, or Daily Rounds, or Map My Genome, various different business models. What do you think is the most exciting space within healthcare, Gautam, healthcare technology? And what are the recent technology plays transforming the sector? So I'd love your, a little bit of a personal anecdote if you would like to add some, and give the audience some color as we start the panel.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. To just give a larger perspective, in fact, I would say, first of all, I'm very happy that finally an Indian company is being quoted when it comes to statistics, because nobody knows India as well as Indians do. Okay, so the other perspective I would have is that I would bump it up to even 50 to 60% of e-health to happen in the coming years. Simply put, I'll talk from experience that people using cloud, health checkups, and point-of-care devices are my customers. And my typical customer right now is somewhere around 400 kilometers from Pune in the typically drought-hit region of Usmanabad, Latur. Okay, health checkups are going on right there, right now. And that is the real paying customer. And that is why is that customer paying? The simple reason is because there is no infrastructure available otherwise. Okay. So given this is the primary aim of what e-health promises to do. It aims to dissolve distances. Now, all of us are Indians, all of us, we have this problem even in urban cities. So it actually becomes a chronic problem in the rural area. And I'm citing the rural area because you have adopters there. So which means that as time goes on, the services are actually going to be much more in demand in the urban areas. So which is why I feel that, it's a huge transformation waiting to happen. There are other, the sidelines are what is the dependability on service, things like that. The attention that is being given to simple things like online appointment management and things are fairly shallow in terms of what is the real depth of healthcare technology that can happen. So I feel there is a clear path for healthcare to augment itself in a huge way and solve problems which are very practical. You're not trying to sell something that's just good looking, good to have. It's actually a bare necessity that nobody addressed so far. There is very bleak possibility that infrastructure or the state will actually come up to terms with the demand that is there. Mm-hmm. So that's the opportunity, really. And that's what we are trying to show.
I think that's interesting. I'm going to take one thread of what you said and pull it a little bit deeper, and then maybe get Harshad to join me in this. Is you talked about dissolving distances, okay? But I think the context that you were talking about it was more rural to urban, okay? And one of the exciting things that we are seeing is actually companies which are dissolving distances in terms of adapting business models from the West and bringing it to India. Some of these are very exciting and great success stories, but not all are. So I'll use one example which is closer to home for me, because I'm a Wharton grad, and some of my fellow grads, much younger than me, who graduated in 2010, started this company in 2010 called Warby Parker. Okay, and basically for those of you who don't know, what they decided to do, they found this problem in America where the average spend on spectacles by a lot of urban people was north of $300. You want to buy a decent pair of spectacles in the US, you spend a bomb, okay? So they said this makes no sense. And they started this company where you can order your glasses online. A lot of you are nodding, so I think you are probably comparing it to an Indian company, which is exactly what I'm getting at. And they've done fantastically. I mean, I don't remember the last valuation round, but it was really, really high. And they're solving a real model. Now, the company here, which is doing a similar thing, is LensCraft, which is not achieving the kind of traction that perhaps it could. And one conjecture could be maybe it's not such a real issue here. That's just one example. But Harshad, I'm sure you have plenty of others. I'd love your view on this. So the question to you then is, what are the models that will not work in the Indian context? You can perhaps add to that by saying, maybe what might work.
Sure. Thanks, Shivani. I don't want to get into LensCraft and why it is not...
Don't bother about LensCraft. That was just one example.
Offline stores and other things. Yeah. But essentially, see, there are many models trending currently around healthcare. There are challenges in each of them. But in my opinion, the biggest challenge, and it's not intrinsic, but from outside forces, is the challenge of regulation, regulatory hurdles. I mean, telemedicine, for that matter, has huge potential. In the demographics of India, the way India is geographically placed, and the population here, a lot of people don't have access to medicine and good quality doctors for lack of time and a lot of other reasons. And telemedicine, I think, has huge potential in India. But regulatory challenges around telemedicine will not permit them to prescribe medicine or prescribe any prescription online unless there is a touch and feel involved, which again requires physical presence. So unless that regulatory hurdle is not taken care of, or a regulation around it is not clarifying how one can go about it, I see that anything around telemedicine, which also involves, telemedicine can really go forward by using wearables, which are actually doing your lot of touch points to understand what's going wrong or right in your body. or even data analytics. So much of data is available across hospitals. If they can be put together, I think these 3-4 industries, be it telemedicine, data analytics, wearables, can really propel India to the next league. But I think that is regulatory challenges are the highest. I have a couple of companies that I have invested in, have actually had to shut down in spite of being great companies, but they were in clinical research. Now, clinical research, when it set up, was a great phenomenon back in 2010, but in 2011-12, there were regulatory hurdles that barred everybody to do any clinical trials in India. They had no choice. They tried to set up abroad, but they could not, and they had to shut down. Great companies, great team. But I think...
But what else, Harshad? Besides regulatory, do you think that there are some...
There's one thing I would like to clarify,
please
because
clarify.
I deal a lot with the medico-legal stuff. And actually, teleprescription is allowed in India. India has no regulation in one way.
That's the problem.
No, but the problem teleprescription is actually allowed. It's practiced heavily. We have Pan-African networks, as long as it's run by a hospital.
Sure.
Okay, and not run by a third-party service.
Sure.
Or as long as there is a doctor willing to put his name on the prescription, so that medico-legally there's somebody who is made accountable for what happens later. It is allowed in India also. So it's practiced actually. It
is practiced. I know there was a company that came to me for funding in that space, but a lot of my investor networks were reluctant because there's no clarity. As he said, it is practice, but there's no clarity around the regulation. Tomorrow, there might be an axe that the government drops.
That's the lack of investor knowledge.
No, but can I just ask, just push this question a little bit deeper, is that, so are you saying that other than regulatory, you think that most models which have worked well in the West can be adopted here? Or can you think of specifics other than regulation where it might fall apart? I mean, I don't know, the cultural reason, the market, the way we work.
At least in healthcare, I believe regulatory hustles are the largest. But yeah, I mean, there are models trending, be it, as I was saying, wearables. We just did our IoT panel previously. Wearables can push healthcare to a next league.
Right.
Or maybe even data analytics around a lot of data that is available. I think there's a lot of big data analysis that can be done around healthcare, which can, a lot of entrepreneurs can adopt that model to drive their companies.
Right. Mangesh, can you add to that? I'll just, take the same thing, just pull it out. Is that pulling from what Harshad said, there seem to be lots of very exciting areas. Like Harshad mentioned telemedicine, he talked about data analytics, he even talked about wearables, okay? There are other, and what we are seeing is that there's a ton of money which is going into marketplace-driven models, at least in India, right? So the last 3 companies that have received funding as of, I don't know, a couple of months ago, Healthcart, Lenskart, FirstCry, all marketplace models. But we are seeing money finding its way into other interesting business models, as Harshad mentioned, okay? So I'll add to a couple of things that Harshad mentioned. In addition to telemedicine, etc., the doctor engagement, doctor search, point of care, and of course the wearables and data analytics, as he said. So Mangesh, you're a seasoned investor. Where do you think investors should be putting in their money? Could you name 2 areas that you believe would be very interesting from an investor standpoint specifically?
Specifically, thanks Shivani. Specifically in the healthcare, the way, and any investor would look at it that way, is always, first draw a value chain. Whether it is the entire drug value chain, whether it is the delivery, which is, the hospital value chain, or whether it is the devices value chain. And my personal belief is that there is opportunity in all 3, or maybe if there are more sectors. You need to pick the part of the value chain which you believe is most valuable or will become most valuable going forward. Because within the value chain, if the entire system is growing at 10, 15%, there are some parts of that value chain will grow at 40, 50, 60%. And there are some which will shrink. You need to identify which ones are the ones which is going to shrink and which are the ones who will take over. And that is where, I think the opportunity lies. So, you start from, let's say, drug discovery or development. I think there is an opportunity here. Things are moving from, real clinical trials to, in vitro trials. Things are moving to simulation. So there are opportunities lying there. There are opportunities in that space. Within that space, opportunities in analytics as well. You talk about, real drug delivery or development. There are talking about, different delivery mechanisms of drugs. So there are opportunities which are lying there. So it's not that, if it is antibiotic, it is getting delivered in a certain manner. That antibiotic will grow at maybe 10-12%. But if there is a new delivery mechanism which you identify, that can grow at much faster rate. So you identify an opportunity there. It could be in the drug distribution system, that's where some of these guys, which is HealthCart or some of these marketplaces come in. You are essentially reducing the distance and making the choices available to customer, and therefore that platform may grow. But is that helping the entire drug market grow much faster? Perhaps not. But that segment will grow, and therefore as an investor, you need to identify what will grow there. Similarly, you talk about your hospitals change. You need to identify whether big hospitals will grow or smaller hospitals will grow. What value does a smaller hospital provide compared to a larger hospital? And therefore, if you come to a conclusion that people are comfortable going to a smaller hospital, then perhaps that's the one which is likely to grow. Similarly, there is technology play there as well. So your normal operation getting into laparoscopy surgeries, or the slide which you just showed, those kind of surgeries, which is computerized surgeries, etc. That's something which is likely to grow. But in all of this, the point which I want to add in addition to what Harshad said, other than regulatory, what the other issue is the trust and comfort. All said and done, still we trust our family doctor the most. We trust experience the most. When you don't see a person behind the wheel, you don't know whether he is a young IIT graduate with a lot of enthusiasm coming up with something which may be relevant for you, which may not be relevant. And therefore, I want to back that up always with advice which is experienced advice. And that's something, therefore, sometimes some of these models, when they don't take care of some of these issues, they falter. So once you marry the two, you have experience and you have technology, and that is what you use to deliver products. That automatically builds in a lot of trust as far as the consumer is concerned.
Fantastic. So this was the first bit of our panel. So just to give you a quick view, here we covered healthcare, and we did an introduction of it. And just to give a very, very high level summary of our panelists' views here, I think we got lots of exciting takeaways. Gautam talked about dissolving distances and cloud-based services. Harshad added that there were a lot of very, very exciting models, which included telemedicine, analytics, etc. But one of the biggest challenges is regulatory hurdles in India. And so we can't just adapt blindly from the West. And finally, Mangesh, I think, added a very critical point that it's not about picking one of these versus the other. It really is sort of doing a deeper dive into the value chain and saying within each of these, where does the value lie really? So which one is going to face disproportionate growth? And I think the overarching theme was sort of trust and comfort. And with that, I am going to shift gears on the panel slightly to weave in education. Okay, so Samir, this one is for you. India has 1.4 million schools, 35,000 higher education institutions. And today we are talking about a completely new world where you may no longer need a classroom. A lot of us in our age group on this panel probably had similar experiences when we went to class, learn this by heart, and then you sort of didn't even know what you were really, learning or understanding. But things are completely different now. So we're seeing very exciting examples of teacher engagement, where it's not just teacher to student, but peer to peer. We're seeing content take on various different shapes, like Khan Academy, Coursera, etc. And how are these cloud-based services redefining learning, Samir? How do you see cloud services replacing traditional teaching mediums? And I think this was an interesting segue from Mangesh's point also, because Mangesh ended by saying, listen, all this is great, but trust and comfort are still very important in terms of personal interaction. So how do you see this cloud-based service redefining learning in this new era?
Thank you, Shivani. With regards to this particular cloud-based learning or e-learning, as we do see, there are two approaches. One is obviously the content provider side, and the other aspect or the other side is related to the consumers. And both the sides really do have benefits. Obviously, cloud really does provide that particular scalability, and the entire peer-to-peer platform really can get benefited with that particular entire scalability approach of the cloud. And in terms of customers, if you do take a look at just as in case of Coursera, earlier they really started with live programs, and now they really have started offering those particular on-demand programs. So that obviously is really nothing but most important in the current world, the pace with which we are really moving. Obviously, it really brings in a flexibility to the executives, working executives, as well as those particular learners who really are trying to find time, and there is a fire in their belly to really learn something new. And these, the second most important aspect is the quality. Obviously, if the courses are really going to get delivered from the top-notch IIM, IITs, Stanford, or all those particular Ivy League schools, and sitting out over here or wherever that particular candidate really happened to be, obviously that quality is also really going to bring in or play a major perspective. And third and most important thing, as you really did mention about Khan Academy, one quick thing I really remember, as soon as my daughter really passed one of those particular middle school scholarship exam, I really gave her one of the tablets. And as she's really preparing for her next entrance exam in terms of Homi Bhabha kind of thing, the concept she is really trying to learn, those concepts on that entire visual graphical aspect, she is really trying to hone further when she is really coming home. And simultaneously, one good thing is at her standard, I mean, be it in 6th standard, 7th standard, teachers are also really using PowerPoints, explaining those particular concepts. That is really good sign. Although I really would really like to call them as green shoots. And e-learning is really not the only thing in education technology, what we really do believe in. There are a lot many consumer-centric, that is students, parents, working executive-centric, a lot of things are really need to be improved, such as admission processes right from playgroup to post-graduation, which is a major hassle, anxiety, and technology is really not being used up to that level. And cloud definitely really does help in addressing not only e-learning, but maybe those admission processes, assessments, be the candidates' assessment, their campus interviews, or all those particular assessments in the campus or universities. So cloud on both sides has really got a role to play. On customer side, it is really giving them the flexibility, quality, and a lot of less of disruption of the services. And on manufacturers or suppliers side, obviously it is really bringing in all that particular scalability at a pretty minimalistic cost.
Thanks. So I'm going to pick up one of the anecdotes that you talked about, your class 5 or class 6 daughter, you know, where the teacher is going through PowerPoints. I remember my teachers basically didn't have to do any of that, and they were still God, right? Because our culture sort of comes from that. If you look historically with the whole Gurukul system, you know, students were expected to stay in their professors' houses and sweep the floors and things like that. And fast forward to today, where you actually have some of these technology companies in education, like ratemyprofessor.com, etc., which give the students the option of rating professors. So now students have become customers, professors providing a service, and they need to be ranked. In fact, I'll just add one very small anecdote. Sorry, I know the moderator shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to just take the privilege here. Is that when I went for my MBA, it was a huge culture shock because I went to Wharton. And we used to have this auction rate for our professors. So we actually had a technology platform called Spike. And each professor, and you got a certain number of points, and each professor was quote unquote worth a certain number of points, and you bid on that professor. Like an auction, which was totally transparent and everybody knew about it. And this is a similar concept to ratemyprofessor.com. So Harshad, I'd love your views. Do you think such models would face resistance from Indian students and teachers? What's the future for these types of models?
Thanks, Shivani. You know, in my opinion, we will need to change with time. You can't do away with all this. Just like, you know, previous discussion, IoT is taking over the world. Yeah. Such new innovations are taking over. It's a matter of time when India also adopts. You know, professors also are held accountable, and it will come in. I mean, there are you know, some examination sites. There are some preparation sites. There are a lot of things happening around the education field. But just weaving in what I am kicked about in this whole process. Mm-hmm. When it comes to EdTech, is you know, phenomenal potential of blended learning, what we are doing, what you just mentioned, PowerPoint, animation, videos in your classroom. You know, now you need plug points in your classroom, which nobody ever thought about. You need, because everybody's carrying laptops to your classrooms. So right from schools and colleges, so blended learning is great. And flipped learning, this is a new trend that has happened, which is essentially do your learning at home and do your homework in class. So that's a new trend in US, and I think it will catch up here as well, where you are given all these Khan Academy videos, and there's a lot of information where you can do your learning on your own sitting at home. A teacher just standing there like a robot teaching you is no longer, people are not interested. That is what used to happen 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Now people are saying that I can do that on a video. Let me come to the classroom and do my homework, which is interactive. So that's the new flipped learning technology, and people are really, really kicked about that and how to integrate that in your today's classroom. So I am totally kicked about that. Second one is very, very clear. Technology has mandated us, or now with technology it is possible to engage in personalized learning and adaptive learning. So some people might be slower learners, some are faster learners. Your software will pick up your pace, will teach you what you're weak in, what you're strong in. There are a lot of test preparation sites are already doing that in your finding your weak spots. So these are the new technologies that you need to adopt to, and new trends. I think if people can catch up to these, I think there is phenomenal growth potential.
I think that's very exciting. So we learned about blended learning and flipped learning. Very, very exciting concept. But Mangesh, because you talked about trust and comfort in the last round, so I'm going to come back to you here and take your point of view. I think this is sounding completely fascinating on EdTech, and I think it was interesting that you said in the past the teacher standing in the classroom like a robot was all right, and today if they're going to do that, then might as well be a robot, who needs them. But I'd love your views, because I am seeing something quite curious and interesting, is that while we're all very excited about EdTech, right, a cynic might say in the Indian context that some of these traditional exam prep, which run on the same old, brick and mortar basis, are doing quite well. Whereas you see the early adopters of the smart classroom technology, using this blended learning in the Indian context, some of them are somewhat struggling. So can you throw some light on this for us, Mangesh? Is it this dichotomy?
Yeah, sure. First, just to add one more point to what Harshad said on this flipped classroom. So a very interesting thing I learned about it is that professor is not allowed to talk for more than 5% of the time in the class when students come back to class after they have learned. And so what is happening, they're saying that this has to be a facilitation process and not a teaching process. And therefore it is not going to be a monologue, it is going to be a dialogue. And exactly the same thing, I want to blend that into the next part of your question. Learning is all about sharing. And all of us who've been, all institutions, there is a process of case study solving, etc., which has been an accepted practice. And learning essentially comes from getting divergent views and ultimately getting your own synthesis done and saying that this makes sense for me. Now, just to share an anecdote, I was talking to a parent of a child who entered into a 12th standard. And I asked the same question to this parent, saying that why are you getting them into one of those regular IIT prep kind of courses? Why don't you put them into some of these e-learning courses? So very interesting answer. One is that I have only one child and I cannot take risk with that child. This is not an opportunity which is going to come to me tomorrow again. So there are decisions which have long-term impacts, and there are decisions which have short-term impacts. If I buy a product and it turns out to be a bad product, I can throw it away, buy another product. But can I do that with my life? So I will not do that with my life. One. Second is the same shared learning experience, which is when students get into a class versus when they learn in an environment where they're alone, there is no spirit of competitiveness. There is no environment which you get, which is the exam environment, and therefore the preparation levels are completely different. And this is what I heard from him. This is a third aspect which I learned from, very interesting aspect, saying that ultimately, I come from a middle class background and I have saved this much money for this coaching class. I cannot have a situation where I have this as well as somewhere else also where I spend money. Other, I have no guarantee that it is successful. Here also I have no guarantee, but I have enough evidence that it has worked for some people in the past. And therefore, I'll continue to do this. So therefore, my view, taking from that, my view is that it is, if people say that food habits change, it takes generations for food habits to change. In my view, education is much more than that. If it takes one generation to change food habits, it may take 2 generations or 3 generations for education habits to change. And therefore, this is going to be a slow process, but I am not discounting the role of technology here. It is very, very important, but it's going to play a supplemental role. So when you have a classroom training, you also have training which is going to be additional training which will come through those videos, those, learning modules or some of those things which is going to be add-on. So that's my take on this.
Fantastic. So this was the second bit where we touched education. So just again, very quickly, we talked about, Sameer talked about how the quality of the courses is very relevant rather than just the cloud-based delivery. And Harshad added some fascinating points on flip learning, blended learning. And I guess Mangesh summed it up by saying, listen, these things take a long time. Yes, we are going to have supplemental, technology being supplemental and adding a lot of value, but tastes and preferences take sometimes generations to change. So with that, I'm going to move back to bringing in both sort of education and health, jump back to healthcare for a bit, okay? And I'm going to try to, because it's the last bit of the panel before we get into the surprise round. So I'd like to get back to Gautam on healthcare, okay? So Gautam, I've been very fascinated by this young lady called Elizabeth Holmes, who I believe is sort of the youngest female self-made billionaire. By her company raised about $400 million, her startup company at a valuation of $9 billion, making it one of the most exciting healthcare startups recently. For the audience here, for some of you who don't know, basically what she discovered was a relatively painless way to prick your fingers and to take out blood and then to analyze it through a smart device. So I think this seems to be taking on quite well in terms of analyzing through these smart devices. And I think Harshad also earlier talked about wearable devices, maybe in the earlier panel, right? So what is your point of view, what in your point of view is the biggest hurdle for Indian consumers to adopt a point of care device from a healthcare perspective? And what type of handheld devices, or rather wearable devices, do you believe would have the highest adoption rate in India?
The writing with healthcare devices, so let's put some perspective around it. Healthcare devices actually allow you to have ownership of your own health. You understand what your current status of physiological status is, and much of the time your doctor is actually asking you to keep in view of how much your blood sugar is, throughout the day, and just keep a check accordingly. Now, the biggest hindrance in that sense is the medical profession, okay, in terms of healthcare device adoptability. In some ways, it's going to be overcome in the near future because the people like you and me are going to take a kind of a calculated view on whether we can also do the measurements that the doctor does in the hospital or his clinic. And once we are very well aware, and most of these devices are actually in play all around in the West. Okay, so the more complex the device, the more easy it becomes to adopt the simpler devices. Okay, so we might not do a very aggressive blood checkup at home, but we'll do a blood sugar test. Okay, by the way, it's one of the biggest device that's being sold in India in lakhs of quantities per month. And by the way, not one single company makes blood sugar meters. They are all by the top line is either Chinese or Accu-Chek and Johnson & Johnson. So that's the disparity. But nevertheless, they are creating this market of people who go and buy devices instead of going and buying drugs. Okay. So I think the adoptability curve is now getting slightly lesser in terms of its elevation. It will be easier to show a device. The other aspect, the second question from your point of view of which kind of devices would do. To start with, actually, in the next 2 to 3 years, we should see a lot of what we call as vital measurements device come into play, where it starts from wearables to one level, but the problem with wearables is that even in the West, you now see discrepancy in the usage or the utility of those devices. But in the Indian context, people are much more aware, and there are more people with acute or chronic diseases who are your first early adopters. So you have, if you target diabetic population, that's like 6% of our entire country. Okay, so that's
sadly true.
Yeah. So look at the opportunity there in the sick kind of sense. But then you have other such variants of lifestyle diseases, which if you create a device which solves a particular pain point, like for example, an ECG device actually gets somebody who has hypertension and is on the boundary of some kind of cardiovascular disease to come in terms with what is the current status of his heart. Going to a doctor in a place like Mumbai is going to take his day away. Okay? In that sense, he'll buy a device which actually does this measurement, gets him the doctor to report, and the doctor just saying that, okay, you are fine, is good enough to live another day. Okay? This is how people are going to live day to day. So I feel that devices that measure vital signs, as they call it, very, very non-invasively. The overall segment is called non-invasive devices. We'll get to invasive devices once there is like a rampant uptake of all these non-invasive devices.
I think that's very interesting. And one of the things that you said there, which I found very interesting, was that people don't typically want to go to the doctors or possibly go to the hospitals. I mean, if as long as the doctor says they're going to be all right for another day, that's fine, right? However, Sameer, that's very different than schools and colleges, right? I mean, I totally agree with Gautam that, I mean, who wants to go to a hospital? Who wants to go to a doctor? But colleges, I mean, 90% of our Bollywood romances are set against a college backdrop, right? So colleges, classrooms, teachers, that's what you feel emotionally connected with. So isn't it adopting technologies such as tablets in education? Somebody said that these old teachers are like robots, and cloud-based delivery of courses. Are you taking away a critical aspect of education and frankly development of physical interaction, personal communication, feedback? Are you making education very impersonal?
Thanks, Shivani. Yes, one of those particular perspective is this, as we really do see from the old school of thought, yes, this is something that's very much there. As an academician also, I'm really been associated with B schools, and from that particular perspective, yes, it may really do sound like that. But if you do take a look at from a consumerism perspective or from the student's perspective, each professor, each teacher was really having a different knack of teaching the subject. But when this is really been becoming impersonal, again, I'm really giving a thrust to the quality. When it is really becoming impersonal, the subject to all those particular average IQ students or candidates is really being taught in an exactly same way, So those particular examples which are really being adopted or really being understood by the masses or those particular average students, obviously really going to help all those particular set of students. That is the first and foremost thing about being impersonal. The fun definitely will really be missed out. Because all those particular, because as Mangesh rightly said, learning is all about sharing. It's all about the most new term which is really coming up is an also experiential learning. What he has really understood from this kind of a scenario and what I really need to get or take those particular learning from someone else, definitely people would really like to adopt that, So from that particular perspective, there are two sides to it. Yes, by becoming impersonal, the quality, because it is really going to be consistent across all those particular segments, and it is really going to get delivered. Okay, and second thing, yes, the fun aspect out over there. And when we are really talking about the fun aspect, yeah, we will really be missing those particular classrooms. But there are so many chat rooms. There are so many of those particular WhatsApp. Everything is really been bringing in the fun furthermore. So that from that particular perspective, probably we are really not again missing out.
Okay, interesting. So the next Bollywood romance will be a WhatsApp one. Now I'm going to get to the investors on the panel, both Harshad and Mangesh. And you know, we are actually in the third leg of our panel where we talked about where we first started off with healthcare, then we got into education, and in our third section we're sort of, you know, talking about both here. And as an investor, okay, so there are various business models in EdTech and healthcare technology, and I'm going to just break it up one way, right? There are various ways to slice it, but one way would be, say, online content like Khan Academy or WebMD, okay, marketplaces like Amazon or HealthCart, cloud-based delivery like Topper.com or Daily Rounds, and disruptive technologies, so virtual classrooms, robotic surgeons, etc. So I know, Mangesh, you mentioned earlier by saying that you can't really pick one, you don't want to pick a poison, but you know, within each poison, there's something attractive and something grows disproportionately. But I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here. I'm saying pick a poison and tell me why you like it. And I'd like your view as well as Harshad's.
I'll still avoid the question. You know, there are various ways private equities or VCs look at businesses. Some look at sectors, some look at the stage of the businesses. I have looked at very few businesses who look at geography and say that I will invest in this geography because this is something which makes sense. So I was thinking while I was coming from Pune to Mumbai to Pune, and I was thinking why there is this discussion about Pune ecosystem and, you know, what is happening in Pune, and realized that there are indeed a lot of things which are happening in Pune. Started thinking about it, whether it is on the education side or healthcare side, there are very, very old institutions which are of repute. And therefore it provides a backbone for research for whether it is education or whether it is medicine. Second is, because there are so many students coming here, there is a big ecosystem of young generation, young population which is available here, which is obviously a lot enthusiastic, aspirational, they want to do something, they have seen, or they are seeing wealth getting created in front of their eyes. Third is, there is no dearth of talent because obviously these education institutes are, you know, coming out with newer and newer students every year. So therefore, you know, in a way it creates an ecosystem which has everything within that, and what is missing, what was missing perhaps is something perhaps which is capital. Being so close to Mumbai and being a financial capital with 2 hours of distance, that is also a problem which is getting resolved. So what I see is you know, why Silicon Valley got developed, for example, is nothing but essentially for this ecosystem. And if that ecosystem can be made available here, where you have right demographics, capital, talent, and experience and institutions. When I'm saying experience, I also realize there is huge amount of defense establishment which is there. And there is a lot of experience which is available. So some of our companies have actually hired talent from those institutions. So any business model which we look at, if that business model can be supported using this ecosystem, that is something which definitely we should get in. But to answer now to your question, these all e-businesses are global businesses. And when I'm saying global businesses, whether you run it sitting here or whether it's run it sitting in Russia, it doesn't matter. Your customer could be anywhere. And therefore, while they provide an opportunity, they also provide a big threat. So today you get into something, and pardon me because I'm not from a VC community, I'm from a PE community, and therefore we invest only when the business model has been established. So for us, it is always very difficult to pick a model saying that whether this will become successful or that will become successful, because the moment I first start looking at who can come and disrupt this, and you know that anywhere, you know, someone sitting in Fiji and Tonga Island can also come and disrupt this kind of a model. So there are new things which are happening which in a way make me very, very jittery to pick up a particular business saying that put $100 million behind this model because it is going to become successful. So to answer again, I think for me it is very difficult to pick.
So he's not going to answer, but Harshad, you are an early stage guy, so you're going to pick that poison and say $100 million behind this. What's the poison?
Good stuff. Mangesh, you gave a very clear view of a PE community. How do they operate? You know, they don't look at business models. They look at, you know, what is the disruption and how this is going to pan forward. You asked me which business models as an angel or a seed investor that I am.
That's right. That's right.
You mentioned content.
I talk about content, marketplaces, cloud-based delivery,
Cloud.
disruptive technologies.
Right.
Or add any other.
Yeah. So it's, I'm going to tick the box, none of the above. I, as a seed or angel investor, I have done enough investment. I have done over 30 investments, facilitated over 20 investments. I have not looked at business models while investing. Never. If you ask me what is it that I have looked at, 3 things. First is the team. Second is the team. Third is the team. The business model is irrelevant. Believe you me, because I am married to them for next 5-7 years. Business models are bound to change. All right, I have to back the right team. I said this in my previous panel as well. I have to back the team, a team that is capable of maneuvering through tough times, through tough markets, and change their business model as the time changes. Very, very, very critical. None of my plans which I focused on, none of my investments where I focused on the business model have really worked. Let me be very frank. But, and you can ask any other business model person whether that was their plan A. The plan A is never what they end up doing and being successful at. That's always the plan C, D, or E. But having said that, if I have to, if you point a gun to me and says, you better answer.
Yeah, pointing a gun.
So I would say, content, just to weave things over, if you build really good content, proprietary content, I think there is a way to build a marketplace around it, if you look at it, and get into e-commerce, and sell things around the content. And if you build really good content, again, you can, there is a clear synergies on delivering through the toppers and the. So content plays a very, very important role. I think proprietary content going forward will play a critical role, in my opinion.
So this was the third bit of our panel, and now I'm going to get into the surprise round. So the third bit of our panel had a couple of very interesting takeaways, one of which was that the next Bollywood romance is going to be on WhatsApp, and the other one is that the only thing that matters is team, but really also content.
Thank you very much, and a big hand to all our panelists. Thank you very much, especially to Shivani Bhasin for her live wire moderation.